everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Vegan Proteins, Muscles by Brussels Radio. My name's Giacomo.
And I'm Danny.
And this is our 76th episode. Welcome back, everybody. Thanks for tuning in to another episode. I hope you're all doing well, staying safe. I feel like we mostly made it through that crazy cold front that seemed like it ripped across the entire country only a few weeks ago. Over here, it's starting to warm up as well, but we did get another snowstorm. I don't know if it'll be the final snowstorm for this winter. What do you think?
Probably not. Probably, like, literally New England, just when you're like, yeah, spring. That's when like the snowstorms start to pummel you down. I mean, I hope that was the last one, but I doubt it.
Yeah, it's kind of a cruel joke. I'm more familiar with weather in New York City. That's where I spent most of my life to date. And we had some pretty bad winters in Four Seasons. Over here, winter just seems to drag.
Sure does. Although, I don't know. I'm looking, and next week it looks like we'll see a day with a high of 57, which is crazy.
That's our cat, by the way.
Okay.
Sandy, you want in on this episode? Fun fact about one of our cats, we have French door handles in our home, and he knows how to open them.
Yes, he can open all the doors. It's very fun. So anyway, next week it looks like it's going to be close to 60.
Yeah, which is actually, that's news to me. I had no idea it was warming up that much. I am a bit of I turn into a kid, a literal child when it snows outside. And I got to hang out with, speaking of children, my niece and nephew, and I think, was it their first time sledding?
Yeah, it was.
I did not even know that. My niece, she has like literally no fear. Between the both of us, it's a bad combination. As much as the daredevil that she is, we went to a hill that wasn't too bad, and we had a blast.
Well, according to Daisy, it was the biggest mountain. Yeah. It was really cute. And Desmond, he's only one, but he's pretty rambunctious himself, and he loves to climb, and he's super physical. And we strapped him into a sled, and Giacomo dragged him around at breakneck speed. They had a blast. It was a good weekend.
Other than that, on the day after, Danny kicked me out of the house, actually. And when I came back a little earlier than she asked me to, there were a dozen or so burritos on the table. She went crazy with this new recipe that she just put out on YouTube, actually. So check that out if you haven't already. And I usually, honestly, I'll be real with you, I hate onions and I hate peppers. But these burritos had onions and peppers in them, and I enjoyed the hell out of them.
Breakfast burritos. Mm-hmm. They're breakfast burritos that I made a YouTube video batch cooking breakfast burritos, and it's high protein, and I was really pleasantly surprised with how they turned out. So if that's your thing, be sure to check out the YouTube channel for the recipe. So far, it's been a hit. So what are we talking about today, Giacomo?
Training and what it's like to really enjoy lifting. I feel like when it comes to bodybuilding, this is one of the things that becomes a struggle, because in the beginning, and when I say in the beginning, let me give you some context here. In the first 1 to 2 years worth of training, you wind up getting really into learning lots of different movement patterns, and you get caught up in how fast you gain muscle. And so there's just so much excitement and fanfare and variety with bodybuilding the first 2 years that there's not really much of a lack of desire in enjoying what you're doing. When you start to get into the later stages, as in years 3, 4, etc., there's a lot of repetition involved, which I guess some of us enjoy. I feel like it also gets boring. And what do you do to stay excited and to continue to be interested and engaged in your training? I mean, the truth is that I think eventually you start to lack the motivation and even lack the drive to continue to train consistently. Like, you should. Why are you going to keep doing it if you're not necessarily in love with the process? For me personally, I started when I was really young, and I had my motives. I had several motives. I wanted confidence. I didn't want to be teased as a kid. I wanted the girls to like me. I wanted to play sports and make the team. And I got to chum it up with my buddies who are also into sports. So I had my social things that kept me motivated. And I was just like young and didn't have many responsibilities. So it was easy to just like get really into it. But then I entered my 20s and I had been at it for like a decade and I just fell off. I just fell off entirely. And I got back into training. I'm like, you know what? This is all about getting back into training. But these days, 11 years later, getting back into it, I've found that there's been peaks and valleys where there's been times where I really haven't necessarily even enjoyed what I was doing. And yeah, I feel like that's what I kind of want to talk about today.
I don't think I know any serious lifter who's been lifting for a long time that hasn't gone through that. And I just think a lot of people don't talk about the fact that, yeah, that happens. That happens. You know, you go through periods where it's time to train and you're not excited to go train, or you look at your routine and you're just like, ugh, not today. I don't want to do this today. Or you go in and you kind of just go through the motions and like, I don't want to say almost half-ass your way through the workout because you're just not into it. I think everybody has gone through that. And I think it's normal to go through periods of that with all kinds of things that you do, not just lifting. But certainly it happens with lifting, but all the real hardcore lifters, they just like never mention that this happens sometimes.
And it's easy to justify that you're not necessarily training with intensity because, oh, it's a marathon or a sprint. And if you just keep training over time, the job will get done. You'll get better at your lifts. But are you telling yourself a lie? Right?
No, I don't think that's a lie. It's true. If you go in and you do your exercises and you're making sure that you're progressively overloading, your body doesn't care if you're passionate about it or not. Like, progress will happen if you're doing the right things. If you're miserable doing it, is it worth it?
And I guess that's the question. And more often than not, I think for me it's a yes. But there are times when it's a no. And I think the challenge is when you don't necessarily have something in front of you to look forward to.
Oh, you mean like the entirety of last year for everybody? Oh my gosh, I've heard that from almost every single one of my clients. I just don't have anything to look forward to anymore. And I'm like, I feel you. It's true. So I think it's really important to find, and there's two bottom lines here for me. Bottom line number one is you have to find a style of training that you enjoy. You change it up, make it something that you like. And then two, which Giacomo and I talked about very briefly before we started recording this, is like, you just gotta do it. You just have to do it. And that's I was like, there's our whole podcast in a nutshell. You just got to do it. He was like, well, you could kind of sum up everything we've ever talked about with you just have to do it. Which then I was like, Nike really nailed it when they came up with that slogan, actually. They really summed it up. But yeah, it really is those two things. If you hate doing a particular style of training, don't do that particular style of training. That would be silly. If there's a particular style of training that you hate doing, you don't have to do it. There are many, many routes to reach a specific goal, and you have to find one that you enjoy. And you can take breaks and you can change styles, and all of that is okay.
Another strategy that I've been afraid to use in the past, but I've been more interested in strategizing with clients and even myself these days, is to do things that are not necessarily specific to your sport, whether it's bodybuilding, powerlifting, or like whatever kind of training that you're into. There's nothing wrong with cross training and doing something that doesn't even necessarily have direct carryover to what you love, what you want to love doing the most for the long term.
Like what? Give me an example.
Say you want to, I don't know, go cycling for like 15 minutes twice a week, or play tennis for 45 minutes on the weekends. You would have asked me 10 years ago and I'd have been like, no. Why don't you try bodybuilding more? But these days it's like you need something to keep you going. Honestly, Danny, I remember that conversation that you and I had when we'd only known each other for a couple of years, and I guess I was kind of all over the map, and you were like,
no.
Yeah. And you were like, listen.
That's how Daisy says it.
Mm-hmm. I don't know if she's copying you or her. It doesn't matter. Point is that you were like, if you want to be a good bodybuilder, you can't be running and biking and playing racquetball and bodybuilding. You need to sacrifice. You need more specificity in bodybuilding, or you're just never going to be a really good bodybuilder. And those words were painful because I didn't want to do it. And they still sting to this day. But I know that it's important. But I think there comes a tipping point where after you're truly invested in the specificity of your sport or sports of choice, that it's helpful to start to do other things because, one, life is too short. And two, I think it just makes you a more well-rounded, happier athlete, and you wind up pushing harder in your chosen sport.
Well, yeah, at that particular time, which was a long time ago, what you wanted was to be the best bodybuilder you could be. And what you were doing was not going to do that for you. I mean, I know your goal is still to be the best bodybuilder that you could be, but for some people, that's not the goal. For some people, the goal is just to look pretty good, feel pretty good, and stay healthy, right? In which case, you don't need a ton of specificity there. If someone's goal is to just be happy and healthy and they like running, but I know that's not conducive to their muscle building goals, I'm not going to be like, no, you can't run. That would be a really crappy thing to do, even though running isn't great for muscle building goals, for example. So it's really about stepping back and figuring out what your actual goal is, making sure they don't conflict with each other. Yeah, if the goal is, I just want to be happy and healthy, really all kinds of movement can achieve that. And if your goal is, I want to be the best bodybuilder ever, but right now I hate my effing training and I don't want to go to the gym, then maybe it's a good idea for you to go play some tennis for a while until you enjoy going to the gym again. Because the worst thing that could happen is that you drive your passion for fitness completely into the ground and you never want to go to the gym ever again.
And obviously, if you're the crazy type that likes to take things to the umpteenth degree and competition is more important for you than anything, you'll probably still go to the gym, but do you really need that kind of level of dissatisfaction in your personal world outside of the fact that you're still training and reaching your goals? I don't think that kind of mindset flies long term. I think you deserve better than that, basically. To Danny's point earlier in our conversation, this past year has been really hard. There's been all kinds of things where it's felt like awkward for people to talk about it, but it's like, okay, I had a vacation planned, and it's not like that was the reason why I was cutting, but it would have been nice to be able to enjoy my gains and being leaner and being on vacation. Or I had a competition planned and now I don't, and that can be soul crushing or just really confusing to navigate. Whatever the thing that you were working towards, the truth is, like, what you're really working towards are your results. But it's nice to be able to enjoy those results in real life too. And when in real life is yourself isolating and not having anywhere to be, like, how do you reckon with that?
Well, I think a lot of people really struggle to work hard in the gym and also outside of the gym at home without a goal. And I remember once on one of our monthly calls for our clients and our academy members, one of our live calls. Do you remember Nadej? Actually, she's one of our bikini competitor. She's a pro level bikini competitor client. She chimed in and she was like, I don't know how to train, not training for a competition. How do you train when you don't have a competition to train for? Like, because she's such a hardcore competitor, the concept of training without like an actual deadline was foreign to her. And she was on this, in our Zoom calls, it's athletes of all levels, home athletes, weekend warriors, all the way up to pro level athletes. So she's listening to all these other folks talk about just their life and health goals. And she's like, I don't know how to do what you guys are talking about. So it was so interesting to see how somebody who, we would think of as like so advanced, right, would be learning something from people that had never set foot on a competition stage before. So what I'm getting at is a lot of people need goals. The goal doesn't have to be a competition though. So for Nadej, it had always been a competition was the goal. Or she also runs too, so maybe like some races would be a goal. But there can be so many other types of goals. You could have a strength goal, like I want to be able to bench press my body weight. That's a big goal for a lot of women, by the way. I've never been able to do it. I've not yet been able to conquer that. That could be a huge goal that you could work towards. You could want to run a 5K in a certain amount of time. You could want to bike a particularly hard path around where you live. You could want to do well in a tennis match, because I don't know why tennis keeps coming up today. But there are so many different goals. You could want to be in shape for a wedding or a vacation. You could set a photo shoot for yourself. There are so many types of goals you could set, and that's totally one of the things that you can do if you're just kind of feeling in a rut, is make a goal for yourself. I have one client right now, she's kind of killing it actually. She did this of her own volition. She set a monthly miles goal. So in February, she wanted to walk at least, I think in January, she wanted to walk 50 miles, and she did it by the end of the month. For some, that might be a lot. For some, that might be a little, but for her, it was the perfect goal to keep her motivated to keep doing it and succeed by the end of the month.
That's pretty cool. That kind of reminds me of the goals that it's like, I want to get in a certain amount of push-ups per day, or it's like greater than a step goal. It's like, okay, what am I doing here? Am I getting in a certain amount of mileage doing whatever it is outside of the gym? Even though it doesn't necessarily seem like it's going to help your training on paper, in reality, I think it does make you the type of person that winds up making better decisions when it comes to your programming and charting your course for your bigger goals. When you create smaller goals outside of your training and you just wind up making more well-rounded decisions on how to stay fit and healthy, you just wind up having a better course of action and better balance towards your actual goal, even if it doesn't necessarily seem that way. At least that's what I've found.
Well, in the beginning of your training, like you said, pretty much every time you set foot in the gym, you can see you're improving. You're lifting a little heavier, you're getting a little stronger, you can tell maybe you're looking a little bit better almost every time you go to the gym in the beginning. And then as you become more advanced, it is much further in between those milestones. Sometimes you can go weeks and weeks without seeing an actual improvement on a particular lift, and that's normal. It can be kind of demotivating for a lot of people. So yeah, you do have to set other goals to kind of keep you interested in between those things. And I think that can be important. Another thing that I think, and this is kind of getting a little bit deeper here in talking about lifting specifically. I'm going to be talking about lifting specifically. I remember this quote from Bruce Lee, and I'm going to butcher it right now. It's something along the lines of, when I first started learning martial arts, a punch was just a punch, a kick was just a kick. And then once I learned the art of martial arts, a punch was no longer just a punch. A kick was no longer just a kick. It was more than that, right? And then once he mastered those things, then a punch was just a punch and a kick was just a kick. And I totally feel that way about lifting. And I think a lot of people go through this journey. They start lifting and they just go in the gym and they just do what's written on the paper, and then they go home and they don't really think a whole lot about it. And they start getting results and they start getting like into it. And then they start like researching it, you know, like, oh, what's the optimal amount of sets I could do? What's the optimal amount of reps I could do? How could I split this up to be better? And they get really into it and they realize like, whoa, there's so much more to this than just walking in the gym and just doing what's written on the paper. There's all these strategies you can do. And then you can get really nitty gritty into a point where every rep is really intentional. And you can kind of suck the life out of every single rep and get the most out of it. And you literally can become a master of that craft. I'm not saying you're going to be the strongest or most jacked person in the world, but they say 10,000 hours of doing anything and you are a master of that craft, right? Mm-hmm. If you do anything for 10,000 hours, you'll be an expert at it. 10,000 hours of lifting, I don't know what that actually breaks down to. I've never done it. You can become a master of like squatting. You could be an excellent squatter or pull-upper or bench presser or whatever. And then once you kind of get through that, then it's just real simple again. Then you just go in and get her done. And it's like a part of you at that point. And that doesn't mean you're always super, super excited. Ooh, yay, I'm going to the gym right now. But it's like brushing your teeth or making your bed or taking your vitamins. It's just something that you do.
Right. And that's what I think I'm hearing, is that it makes it so you have ownership to what you're doing as opposed to the exterior goals that you're working towards, so that no matter what happens, you have this thing that's a part of you. It's your lifts, and that's the static. That's the thing that keeps you going, basically.
And I hear from a lot of people, you know, again, when people first get into lifting, they're real excited. They just go and do it. The deeper people get into it, the more excited they are about it some days. And then other days, they're just like, oh God, please no. But there's people that have been lifting for a long, long time, 5, 10, 15 years. And what I hear most often from those people is, this is my favorite time of the day. Why would I ever not want to come here? This is the best part of my day. As I come here at this hour, it's all about me. It's something that I like to do. Of course I'm going to do it. That's the place everybody wants to be. Best believe even those people went through periods where they probably were just not super into what they were doing, and they just got through it. They didn't throw in the towel at that point. They probably changed courses or set goals or just forced themselves to do it for a little while to get to the other side.
I do think that even when you do get to the other side, that life has a way of just throwing challenges your way. And I think the test of whether or not you'll be truly into loving your training, I think you'll be tested. I can't say that I feel like you won't be tested again or I won't be tested again, Danny. I think it's bound to happen.
No kidding.
I mean, I'm saying like 10, 20 years down the road.
Oh, life. I'm thinking like in the next few months is my guess. Curveball, here it comes. Just a guess. No? Okay. No, but of course, life's going to happen and throw you off track. How do you handle that? And I feel like we've done podcasts about literally that. What do you do when everything goes wrong? How do you handle when everything goes wrong? You pivot, you work around it, you focus on what you can do. If you suddenly can train 2 days a week, you train 2 days a week, even though you're used to training 5 or 6 days a week. Giacomo's making a sad face. You guys can't see it. What's the sad face about?
Just when we could only train 2-3 days a week or whatever, and that was a tough time.
It sure was, but we did it, and here we are. And now we're training, 4 or 5 days a week again.
Even when we were training 4 or 5 days a week again, I think it still took many months for it to actually feel right, to feel good. I think it was hard to just trust myself enjoying what I was doing, just because of that period of time where we were training less often. But like Danny said, eventually it comes around. Well, I guess I'm thinking it eventually comes around. You start training 4 or 5 days a week again, and then eventually it's like, okay, we're not catching up or anything. We're just doing what we do.
So I think that's what it comes down to, is at the end of the day, if you're feeling like you're in a rut and you're not super loving what you're doing, don't be afraid to change it. Even if it feels counterintuitive to your immediate goals, if it keeps you moving and keeps you lifting at all, even if it's a totally different style. Let's say you've been bodybuilding for years and you're just bummed out on try CrossFit. Is it the best thing for bodybuilding? No, but it might breathe some fresh life into what you're doing. You might love it. Don't be afraid to change things up if you're feeling not into it until you find something you really like. It's very important that you're enjoying what you're doing, and that's going to keep you in the fitness game for the long term. All right, moving on to our question and answer segment of the day. Okay, we have a question from Facebook. I can see why Giacomo picked this one. It starts off, I love ice cream. So just wondering if you have some healthy, preferably high calorie, homemade ice cream recipes for bulking.
I heard 2 words, ice cream. That's it. No, I heard ice cream and I heard bulking. And those are 2 of my favorite things. While I love store-bought ice cream, and I don't necessarily have an issue sprinkling it in once in a while, I could see why someone would want a healthier version of ice cream, because maybe having store-bought ice cream every day, not necessarily the smartest choice for your health. I mean, you could stand to get in more nutritionally dense foods, but hey, ice cream. So here's a trick that I've done in the past. It's worked out really well, and it's super duper simple. Bananas, that's it. Okay, let me explain. Get a couple of bananas and cut them up. Cut them up into 2-inch pieces, 2-inch pieces, and then freeze them for a couple of hours. After you've frozen the bananas solid, take them out and throw them into a food processor that'll be strong enough to pulse those bananas. Now you have frozen fruit that gets creamy and almost comes into a soft serve. Personally, I like to freeze it again, and then it has a nice solid ice cream texture, or hey, if you have an ice cream maker, even better. But even creamy and pulsed after you take it out of the freezer, it still tastes really, really good. And you mentioned bulking, and obviously ice cream is more about one ingredient. Bananas are the base ingredient. Now you can start to have fun and add. You can choose to add, say, peanut butter or almond butter or cashew butter or your favorite nut butter into the mix. Maybe you want to get a little interesting with it and throw some chocolate chips in for fun, or some peanuts or walnuts or whatever. You can drizzle some maple syrup in there, for example. You can toss other fresh fruit in, like blueberries, maybe even throw some dried raisins in. Obviously not all this at the same time. That's probably not a good idea, though I may have tried it once or twice before in the past because I'm weird like that. But point is, you can have a nice ice cream base with frozen bananas that you pulse up afterwards, and then you can mix in some other stuff and have plenty of nutrient density in a nice, healthy, delicious homemade ice cream. All right, this question is also from Facebook, and this one's for you, Danny. I'm a sloucher. I've been doing shoulder retraction exercises on a regular basis for 2 years now, but outside of the gym, my posture has not improved much at all. I do everything from gentle, higher up exercises to heavy rows and deadlifts. Any suggestions for how I can get into the habit of retracting my shoulders throughout the day and not just when lifting weights?
Okay, so really good question. Slouching. I'm also a sloucher. I sit like a Salvador Dali painting most of the time over all of my chairs. I just melt over whatever thing I'm sitting on. I've done that my whole life. So I get it. My posture, if I'm not paying attention, is not good. And when I was younger, I used to work on my feet all the time. As a server, as a bartender, I was literally on my feet constantly. So this was not really an issue. When I stand up, my posture's fine. When I transitioned to working from home and doing coaching full time, sitting in a chair was literally one of the worst things for my body I've ever done. I had heard the term sitting is the new smoking, but it wasn't until like a year into coaching and working from home that I was like, holy crap, this is so bad for me. So there's a lot of things you can do. It sounds like you're already doing a lot of the right things. So training your back, your mid back, your upper back by doing rows, by doing lat pull downs, by doing a lot of rear delt exercises like rear delt raises or band pull aparts or face pulls. All that's great. You might also have tight pecs and shoulders. So you want to make sure that you are stretching your chest. You could do doorway stretches, or there's some stretches you could do on the floor for your chest, shoulder stretches. Those are going to be good as well. There are also some devices out now. I have never tried them, but I know they exist. It's like a wearable fitness device. And I think it goes on your back like a little sticker or something, and when you slouch it like beeps at you and reminds you to sit up straight. I don't know how well they work, but it's a cool idea. But my favorite thing for posture is actually something that my chiropractor recommended to me years ago. Or rather, I saw him sitting on it and I was like, what the heck is that? And he was like, oh, it's great. It's a kneeling chair. It looks super, super weird. It's just like a seat and then a place for your knees kind of diagonally underneath it. It's a kneeling chair. I think the one that I have is from a company called Dragon. I don't know, I got it on Amazon. It was like $100. Anyway, it forces your pelvis into a good position for sitting, which makes sitting upright actually more comfortable than slouching. I really, really like that. And then in general, you shouldn't be in any one position for too long. Sitting, standing, lying down, there's this saying in physical therapy that your next position is your best position. Because whatever position you're in right now, you should not be in it all the time. You shouldn't be in it for long stretches of time. If you work sitting at a desk like I do, trying to get up every 15 minutes, even if it's just for a couple seconds, walk to the kitchen, get some water, go to the bathroom, whatever, get up. It's going to help you. And then when you sit down, make sure you sit down with good posture. So if you're doing that a few times every hour, you're going to be much more likely to sit in proper posture. Everybody, thank you so much for tuning in to another episode of Vegan Proteins Muscles by Brussels Radio. If you're not a part of our Facebook group, Muscles by Brussels Radio, feel free to come over and join us. You guys would have a say in some of the things that we talk about or some of the recipes we create, like the breakfast burrito recipe, which you should totally check out on our YouTube. Feel free to get in touch with us if you have any questions. You can reach out to us on Facebook, Instagram, Vegan Proteins and Muscles by Brussels, or our email, veganproteins@gmail.com. We look forward to hearing from you. Thanks so much again for tuning in. My name is Danny.
And I'm Giacomo.
And we will talk to you soon.